Hi everyone, and welcome to the forecasting use case with RightPick. There are a lot of scenarios on Tableau that uh, show us a forecast of our sales, of our values, or whatever it may be, uh, that are provided, for example, through automatic processes, and the values are usually fixed. However, there are a lot of situations where we actually want to provide our own values, but we don't really have a good way to do this directly on Tableau. So to tackle that need, we can use RightPick. For example, in this dashboard, I have a map of countries with their forecasting over time. I can see the sales value versus the forecast value per country, and then I have some overall indicators of those values. And with my RightPick configured already over here, we can see that, for example, I can select the country and then add the RightPick form to build that to provide those values. In this RightPick form, I can see that I'm using the unique entries functionality because my values already come up to the cells and the form as well, and I can see exactly the values that were already submitted so far. Now I can simply complete my forecast for the upcoming months. And I can do that, for example, by, let's say that I have the values over here on Excel. It's a very common situation to bring values from Excel to RightPick. I can just simply copy and paste my values in here. Of course, I could manually type them in, but this is just a quicker way to do it. And without changing anything else, we're going to see that very quickly I can submit my data, and my dashboard gets updated once again. If I now open the RightPick form, the Tableau view, I see that my new values that I just submitted are there set as a draft. Of course, this is very simple from an end user perspective. I can just simply come here and provide my values. But how do we get to this point? So that part, of course, takes a little bit more time, and I'm going to show you how this particular setup is configured. I won't be doing one from scratch. I don't think that's strictly necessary because it's easier to show you side by side with what already exists. And that's exactly what I'm going to do in here. On my dashboard, I have the worksheet with a map, and that worksheet has some fields as source fields, right? So that's what's building the worksheet. And the main one that I want to look at is the country. That's where I'm going to be forecasting on, and that's why I'll leave it up there as a configured field. It's the field that will be used to forecast on. Then I have 3 extra fields in this case, one for the month. I will get to it in a second why it's there. We have the sum of profits, and it's currently set as a view only field because it's just on the dashboard. Not on the dashboard, sorry, on the tab review for reference. And lastly, we have the read-only field. So before moving forward, I'll just quickly show you what the read-only field looks like, because it's the one that is an actual calculation. So I'm trying to find it over here. Let me search for it. And then over here, I can show you that it's simply telling me that if or outputting true or false, depending if the value for the month is less or equal than 4. So that means that if the month it's all the way to April, it's gonna be blocked. And that's why it's said that it's a read-only. It's to block cells based on a certain condition, and this is just the 4 month, the month number 4, that's giving us that perspective. So going back to the configuration, I can see that I set the read-only field right there on the read-only section, and that's it. That's it for it. The sum of profit, if you noticed, are there on the table. It was also kind of visually similar to the read-only because it's sent as a view-only field, so it's just there for reference. It doesn't need to get written to the database. but I can still put it on the rows alongside my customly created fields to show the values on the dashboard. Okay, so moving downward over here on the configuration, of course, just like any other right-click configuration, I have to set the name and then define some customly created fields. First, I have these three, which are the ones set on the main form. I have a text field for the forecast name, a comment that is mandatory, and lastly, a date to tell the date of my submission. Then, of course, I have the fields that I'm putting on the tabular rows. As you can see, the sales forecast, cost forecast, and expected discount, as well as the status. That is the predefined field where I have the draft or final, whatever it may be in that case. So over here, these values are all numeric because they're, as you saw, I'm submitting numeric values there. And except, of course, for the status, which is a predefined, that is the options there to select. And then lastly, of course, Tableau view is enabled, so we can unlock this right-hand side. And with this right-hand side, we then have the ability to build these forms. So these sections are all drag and drop. So initially, all the fields will be up there, and we just drag them to their respective places. Now, I forgot to mention the month field. It's actually one of the most critical ones because it's the axis that we're going to be forecasting on. So the month field, it's coming from the worksheet. And this is because typically one of the axes on the Tableau review has to be kind of like a dimension or a source field from the worksheet. And the other axis will be our inputs. And that's exactly what we see in here. So if I open up the Tableau review again, we're going to see that in the top axis, I have the 12 months of the year. And this is exactly because my month field in its underlying data includes the 12 months of the year, so the 12 values. If for some reason my data set only had, let's say, 9 months of data, I would only get the 9 columns. I wouldn't get those. So when building that axis, make sure that you're using the correct field that will show you all the columns that you need. Alternatively, it is possible to configure a predefined field to be on axis. And this means that we can simply add a field over here that could be a predefined field on the axis, and we set it as a predefined. And whatever options we set in here will be our columns. And we could bring it in here. And then there's this drop-down option over here that says that it's going to generate axis entries. But this can only be used if the field is alone, okay? It cannot be used together with a source field. Okay, so I'll just remove it for now. And that's pretty much it for the configuration. Just one last thing that I'd like to mention is that in this case, we're also using the auto refresh, the mark required, and the unique entries. Mark required because we want to select the country before actively forecasting on it. If this was, for example, a more broad dashboard that was being worked on with filters, I could toggle that off. But in this case, because I have all the countries there, if I did remove it, when I would go to do the forecast, it would bring up all the countries that I don't want that. The auto refresh is there, so we can see the changes taking place right away. And then the unique entries makes sure that I'm always working with the latest values for my forecast. Now, we've seen this use case being applied to a forecast. However, it's not a mandatory option to use the Tableau review for forecasting. It can be used for many other scenarios, just like updating products. So let's say that you could potentially invert the axis. You'd put your source field on the rows and your indicators on top. And let's say that you could have 3 indicators. So you'd have 3 columns. And they could be used for flagging products, providing some notes on the products, There's quite a lot of flexibility on these configuration type for right pick that can be explored depending on your need. So yeah, without anything else, thank you for watching. If there's anything, feel free to reach out to our service desk with any use case related questions. We'll be glad to help. And once again, thank you and have a nice one. Bye.